The Seminoles weren't always known as the Seminole tribe. They were originally the Creek people. They were slaves who had escaped from the control of the British colonies. The Seminole War was between the Seminole tribe and the U.S. Army. The war took place in Florida and southern Georgia. The Seminole tribe heard that the U.S. were planning to attack, so instead of waiting for their army to attack, the Seminoles took action and went to their land first. The Seminoles lost when Spain ceded Florida to the U.S. around 1819. The Americans offered a reservation to the tribe where they did accept, but the settlers wanted more of the land. On May 28, 1830, the Indian Removal Act was approved. That was when the government could remove all the 5 civilized tribes east of Mississippi all the way to Arkansas and Oklahoma. After the Indian Removal Act went into effect, the Seminole tribe began being hunted by U.S. troops, which led them to a life of constant running and fleeing. This caused the tribe to make a drastic change in their housing. The Seminoles created a new type of housing called a chickie that could be assembled faster and easier while fleeing from the U.S. troops. Chickies were assembled by cypress logs and palm thatch leaves that were woven together by ropes or vines. These shelters had no walls but had a roof made from the palm leaves. After the Indian Wars ended in 1842, the Seminoles created more permanent housing for their tribe using stucco and bricks. The Seminoles started out in northern Florida, but when the Americans attacked them, the Seminole tribe retreated further south into the Everglades. The Everglades are a huge area of 9 million acres of wet, swampy land covered with tall sawgrass. There are many slow-moving streams of water and stretches of quicksand. The climate is subtropical and the topography is a plain, with hardly any noticeable natural elevations or depressions. Since the Everglades was swamp-like land, the climate was hot and humid. The Seminole tribe consisted of hunter-gatherers and farmers. The tribe farmed various crops such as squash, beans, potatoes, tobacco, corn, and pumpkins, and the women harvested the crops. The Seminole men did most of the hunting and fishing. The men caught game such as deer, wild turkeys, rabbits, alligators, and turtles. The hunters used bow and arrows, and the fishermen usually used fishing spears. Traditional Seminole dishes were cornbread, soups, and stews. The Seminoles used these survival techniques as well as others to obtain the resources they needed. As white settlers began moving to South Florida, they established trading posts. The Seminoles sold animal hides and pelts to the traders and in turn bought cloth, guns, tools, and food staples. This way of life lasted into the 20th century. By this time, the tribe became a tourist attraction and the women made dolls, baskets, carvings, and patchwork. Because they lived in the Everglades, they were able to exploit the natural resources for gain like game, skins, hides, and crops, which made it easier to trade, but mostly they just lived off the land. The goods and cloths obtained from the trading post would be used to create the traditional clothing of the Seminoles. The Seminole tribe is comprised of many different tribes that migrated into North Florida because of the Europeans in colonial North America. The large European influences within these tribes created a new type of clothing that would become their native clothing that was made from European trade goods. Traditional women's garments consisted of a floor-length skirt and a long-sleeved blouse which came to the shoulders. Along with these garments, the women also wore as many glass bead necklaces as they could afford. The Seminole men wore a full-cut shirt with a decorative area usually on the front placket of the shirt. This was accompanied by a turban made from plaid wool shawls and a beaded, woven, or leather belt. The Seminole men would also wear a colorful coat called a long shirt during visits to town or in cold weather. The Seminoles were well known for their patchwork. Along with their beadwork and patchwork, the Seminoles were also well known for their basket weaving and wood carvings. Another tradition in the Seminole culture is the green corn ceremony. There are 3 large ceremonies. On the first, they plant corn. On the second, they have a harvest ceremony. On the third, they have the green corn ceremony when the corn is almost ripe. The green corn dance is performed here. It is thought of as an annual purification and renewal that is meant for the god who grew their corn or crops.